build a bungalow big enough for two. Big enough for two, my honey. Big enough for two, walla walla. And when we're married, happy we'll be. Under the bamboo, underneath the bamboo tree.
The bungalow is an architectural form known the world over. It is especially common as a residence in tropical climates, although its reputation for luxury and comfort has been aided by its profusion in tourist resorts. It has generally been considered a British invention, although the word bungalow exists in many languages other than English, and it is usually understood as a single-story residence, often used as a vacation house which is open to the outdoors and which has large verandas for spending leisure time. One of the main reasons for the bungalow's widespread popularity was that it came to be seen as the recreational building. This association can be traced back to mid-19th century Britain, coinciding with the birth of the concepts of leisure activities and holidays, and when resorts with bungalows such as Birchington sprung up along the coasts. The bungalow was then adopted and adapted by Australians and Americans, thereby ensuring its global reach.
We'll build a bungalow big enough for two. Big enough for two, my honey. Big enough for two, walla walla. And when we're married, happy we'll be. Under the bamboo, underneath the bamboo tree.
But the real origins of the bungalow lie much earlier, in a period when it served neither as a recreation house nor as a resort, but when it was simply an ingenious solution to the vagaries of the tropical weather of Bengal, the erstwhile colony of Britain.
Bengal is the largest delta in the world. The nature or character of the delta is a flat marshy land and suitable for cultivation. The local people, the cultivator or the peasant, they build their own house either in the middle of their cultivated field or close to their field, close to the cultivated field. And they built a very small pavilion-like structure, and it is temporary. Due to the shifting of the riverine shifting, they make a temporary structure.
As many dictionaries indicate, the term bungalow is itself derived from the word bangla, highlighting its origins in Bengal. The bangla ghar, meaning the Bengal hut, was an easily constructed temporary structure used by villagers to reside in or to accommodate cattle. In this deltaic land, where rivers change course regularly and flooding is common, it had the advantage of being set up and dismantled easily. When the first Europeans arrived in Bengal for trade in the middle of the 16th century, they restricted themselves largely to the coasts, where they had established their factories. However, on those occasions when they had to travel into the hinterlands, requiring overnight stays, they turned to the Bengal hut, which their servants could build quickly using locally available materials. As it was originally envisaged, the bungalow had a number of features that made it a unique construction, perfectly suited to the hot sun, humidity, and heavy monsoon rains of Bengal. Its most significant feature was that it was made of bamboo, an inherently flexible material, which led to variations in the number of slopes of the roof, known as do-chala or two-sloped, cho-chala or four-sloped, and art-chala or eight-sloped.
Disposition of the rural hut is a rectangular room with a frontal veranda, and the wall is made of bamboo and the bamboo fence, which is little bit perforated so that the summer breeze can pass through the room. And the roof is carved. This is a special type of roof. This is cho-chala or do-chala. The basic building material of the deltaic land is bamboo, And due to the we know bamboo is a very flexible material. When you bend it down and tie with the rope, then it turns into a strong structural member. And they take the advantage of the pliability of the bamboo. The builders of the Bengal, they make the carved roof to dispose the rainwater as quick as possible.
Because the roof curved as it slanted towards the corners, it extended beyond the bungalow side walls, leading to the introduction of the verandas or open-air corridors that ran around the main room. In a hot, humid climate, the semi-open spaces of the veranda became the principal site of the household's activities. Well before it inspired the British, the Bangla Ghar had already stirred the imagination of the region's former rulers. The architecture of both Hindu and Muslim rulers of Bengal is replete with instances of the chala roof form, serving as a symbol in both temples and mosques.
In the early Islamic period, the Muslim builder adopted some local elements from the Bengal. At that time, the local elements of the Bangalow Ghar, and some of the element is transferred to the permanent structure, while the hut was temporary in nature. Another room can be covered by a dome. A rectangular room cannot be covered by a dome. Then they have to choose a new idea of construction system. And they choose and they find the construction system in Bengal, the Chochala dome, for a rectangular room. And they use this building, this form, as an image of Bengal.
The Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan had spent 16 years in Bengal before ascending the throne, and turned to the gentle curves of the chala roof as an element of his imperial architecture. And this can be seen in some of the subcontinent's most celebrated Mughal buildings today.
The Mughal ruler, King Shah Jahan, had spent several years in Bengal, around 16 years, due to some political reason. And he was inspired deeply by certain Bengali elements, such as the carved cornice and the Chochala dome. And he introduced in Delhi, not only in Delhi and other parts of the India, these two elements in the Mughal architecture. For example, the best prestigious location in the Mughal fort, the roof of the Khash Mahal or Dawani Khash or the audience hall, even the pavilion of the Mughal fort is covered by a Chochala dome. And it passed further to the 18th century and 19th century in the colonial time. At the beginning of the colonial time, the colonial builder, they introduced a building which is exact facsimile from the England. But in the age or during the time, it changed, it converted into a hybrid architecture with Islamic and the colonial mixture. And they adopted some Islamic element like kiosks. And this Mughal kiosk was covered by a Chochala dome.
Towards the end of the 19th century, the British colonization of India was being illustrated through their appropriation of the Bengal hut. But just how had this occurred? Like other Europeans, the British had initially been attracted to the ease with which the bungalow hut could be built as a temporary shelter when moving into the hinterlands for trade.
The early residential accommodation for the British over here was always in the factories, the so-called factories, or in the barracks. When there was certain restriction of them for not living outside among the natives because of some security purpose. So, but on the other side, for the expansion of the trade, for the expansion of the administrative control, they had to move to certain remote places to the interior of the Bengal. So for them, there was a requirement for some living accommodation, which will be temporary, not for long, because they are not living there for long time. So this temporary function needed a temporary solution. And this temporarily actually took their housing. The link was coming from the Bangla Ghar. Because the Bangla Ghar has always been, actually, it developed as a temporary dwelling unit.
The British soon realized that the Bangla hut was versatile enough to be adapted to the new requirements born of their more entrenched settlement in India. As the needs of British governance and administration grew, the single-spaced Bangla Ghar became transformed into a more permanent, multi-room structure. The most important change was the introduction of service spaces along with annex buildings for servants. Further changes were brought about by the emergence of luxury living born of colonial wealth. The pankha, or the hand-drawn fan, was added to the ceiling to create artificial breeze, while the bungalow was sometimes raised on a platform, allowing for a large number of servants to sit and work at a slightly lower level, thereby ensuring social distinction. The development of the bungalow as a common term to refer to British dwellings was much influenced by two events that took place in the middle of the 19th century. In 1854, the Public Works Department was established to build and maintain British administrative and common establishments. And in 1858, the governance of India came directly under the British Crown. These events instigated the design of more administrative buildings, as well as setting a prototype for British residencies in India. Many of the administrative and military models did away entirely with the curved slanting roofs, opting instead for a functional flat one, thereby removing the main attribute of the original Bangla Ghar. However, in other cases, especially with private residences, the slanting roof was retained, leading to a diversification of the British bungalow. In the city of Chittagong in southeast Bangladesh, some of the earliest administrative bungalows for railway officers were built atop the city's hills. These bungalows are evidence that the non-military residences, some of which are double-storied and have greater signs of crafted embellishments, including stained glass windows, wrought iron balustrades, and wooden latticework, were clearly moving away from the austere military models.
The bungalow structure is actually based on the indigenous architecture of Bengal. But it is a British creation. We never had bungalows of that scale before the British came. And they had incorporated certain British things. For example, the wooden floors, which we didn't have before probably. Then the windows, which were shutters. So these were stylistically glass panes on the windows, sometimes the Venetian blinds. So these were very common for the pediments, the broken pediments. These are all things that came with the British, with the Europeans who came to settle and rule.
Once implanted in Europe, bungalows underwent further changes to include neoclassical elements that were in vogue at the end of the 19th century, as well as to accommodate home appliances.
Interesting thing is that the use of clerestory. The middle part is always higher than the flanks where the verandas are there. For the clerestory is quite functional for letting the sun in and also taking the hot air from inside in the flow of the air. So this feature, as it was done in all over India, it became a symbol of a typical residence of European in India.
This Europeanization of bungalows was not restricted to changes in the aesthetics and scale of the structure alone, but also due to its being assigned new functions. By the turn of the 20th century, some Protestant churches had eagerly adopted the form, as may be seen in Sylhet in northeastern Bangladesh. And in Chittagong, we find an early 20th century hospital housed in a bungalow-like complex.
If you compare this thing, or if you see other examples of cottage or ranch house, it has a kind of similar connotation with bungalow. Like in open field area, you have a lot field in your possession, one bungalow or one cottage in the middle. That means that you have more people for you to serve you, and you are kind of having a status of a landlord. That is, I think, one of the reasons of this bungalow being successful.
It is perhaps ironic that by the turn of the 20th century, the bungalow had come to be seen in South Asia as a symbol of European identity. In emulation of the British, wealthy families such as that of Rabindranath Tagore also built their own luxurious bungalows in the countryside. And it is in this setting that the poet penned some of his most celebrated works. But the real change came when many middle-class local Indian elites built smaller versions of these Europeanized bungalows for themselves in cities, as may be seen in the town of Sylhet. The bungalow thus became an urban dwelling unit rather than the rural plantation or leisure building of an earlier period.
When more British were coming here, this development infrastructure actually was also responsible for developing the middle class over here. It's not like the middle class that developed in Europe. It was a middle class which was actually more educated in the sense of European study, European education. The British were actually developing them for their help in administrative function. So, in studying or getting educated in European style, working with the Europeans, they were actually trying to follow the Europeans. They were actually trying to be like the Europeans. For them, copying, for them imitating, was a kind of common tendency. That is another reason that the local elites was actually trying to copy the bungalow.
When the British left the subcontinent in 1947, their palatial bungalows stayed behind, to be soon occupied by government officials. And so, the bungalow's association with authority has continued to this day, even while in other parts of the world it remains a symbol of exoticism, leisure and recreation.